All right, in today's video tutorial, we're going to be doing something a little bit more fun because it is October. We're going to be building this pumpkin. So we're going to design this entire pumpkin from scratch using just CSS. It should be a little fun project. We're going to be using some box shadows, some gradients. We're going to be using pseudo elements, some animations, transitions. Anyway, lots of different CSS tips and tricks along the way. We'll also have a giveaway. So at the end of this video tutorial, we're going to have a random giveaway for a random commenter in the comment section. So don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe on the video. We're going to give away a year free hosting on studentwebhosting.com. So I hope you enjoy this little tutorial and follow along. All right, step one here is just going to be adding some really basic HTML. Now there's not a whole lot to the HTML. In fact, there's only 3 tags. So the first tag we're going to add here is, I've just got a default, you can see index.html boilerplate document here that we've set up many times before. So we're just going to add a couple of divs. So we'll say div class equals pumpkin. So we're going to give a pumpkin class to this, we'll call this a wrapper div. And then inside of here, we're going to have 2 child divs. So we'll have one that is called the eye. And then we'll have one more below this that is called the mouth. And that's it. So we have 3 elements, and we're going to be building that entire pumpkin just using those 3 elements. So I'm just going to save this right here. And really, I'm going to back out of the HTML. Most of the work is going to be done here in the CSS sheet. So let's move over here to the CSS sheet and let's kind of start to code this up. So the first thing we need to set up is a root element. Now we're going to be using CSS variables or custom properties in this project today to make it a little bit easier for ourselves. So we're going to be setting up quite a few. We're going to be setting up a background color, and we'll call this one 1. And right now I'm just going to mark them all as FFF. I'll paste in all the values here in a second. So we have that one, we have another one that we're going to call 2, and then we have another property, this one right here, we're going to call the pumpkin dash skin dash 1. You saw from that screenshot we had several different sort of colors as the pumpkin goes around. We're going to use 6 of these pumpkin skin variables, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we'll just kind of enumerate these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we have 2 more here. We're going to call this one the pumpkin stock dash 1. And we'll call the next one the pumpkin stock 2. Whoops. 2. And then we have 2 more. We're going to call this one the light flicker background 1 and the light flicker background 2. So all we're really using these variables for is our colors. So I'm setting up colors for all the variables just so we can kind of tweak those colors easily if we want to adjust and fine tune things. Now I'm going to pause the video for just a second. I'm going to paste in all the colors so you don't have to watch me do that, and then we'll be right back at it. So I've pasted in all of those colors. You can go ahead and pause the video right now if you want to copy my exact colors and fill those in your project. So now we have our variables set up. Let's go ahead and just add a little bit of code here to our body tag. So we're going to set the width to 100%, and we're going to set the height to 100%. And we are going to give a background. So the background is going to be a linear gradient. And so this is just setting up the background color of our web page here. And we'll do this sort of on multiple lines so it's a little bit easier to read. So we're going to start off with a 40-degree angle here. And then here's where we're going to use our first variable. So we're going to use that dash bg color 1 variable. And it's going to start at 0%. And then it's going to go to our next variable, which is our bg color 2. And that one's going to be 100%. All right, so that is pretty much it. And you can see that now fills our entire background over here with just a simple little gradient that's kind of angled a little bit. Okay, and let's go ahead and set the overflow to hidden on this in case we go out of bounds. We want to get rid of that scroll bar as we're kind of working through this. All right, that's it for the body tag. Now comes the actual pumpkin. So we're going to say dot pumpkin. So this is the parent wrapper element, if you remember. And we're going to say height is 100%. And we're going to give him a Z index of 10. We're going to be using some pseudo elements and pushing and pulling those a little bit. So we want to make sure our pumpkin sort of sits forward a little bit. And then we are going to add in a position. So we're just going to give him a relative position right now. And then we are going to give him some width and height. So the width is going to be 120 pixels. And the height is going to be 120. Nope, height's going to be 100 pixels. And we still can't see anything here. We'll see him in just a second when we give him the background color next. So let's go ahead and say background dash color. And this color is just going to be a placeholder because we're actually going to be filling the color with a gradient here in just a second. So let's just say F18 B36 for now, just an orange. And there you can see. So we've got ourselves an orange box, and that's going to become our pumpkin. All right. Next, let's go ahead and round that guy off. So we're going to give a border radius of 70 pixels, and you can kind of see what that does there. Rounds off our pumpkin nicely. Next, we are going to give this guy a margin so we can kind of push him down a little bit. Let's say margin, I don't know, maybe 2M and auto, just so he kind of stays in the center and gets a little bit down from the top there so we can see him a little bit better. All right, next let's go ahead and give this guy his background gradient. So we're going to be adding another background image, and it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be a linear gradient, and we'll do this on multiple lines to make this a little bit easier to read as well. So we're going to say to right, and then here we're going to use one of our colors. So we're going to use this dash dash pumpkin dash skin dash 1, and it's going to start at 50, or going to go to 50%. Then we're going to give our next one the second color. So this is going to be our dash dash pumpkin dash skin dash 2, and it is going to 50% there. And that's it for that. So you can see our gradient now moves over half of it with one color. There's our color stop right at 50%. And the next color stop moves from 50 all the way over to 100. So that kind of gives us that little effect like so. All right, now in order to create the other sort of segments, if you will, of the pumpkin, we're going to be using the box shadow property. So here we're going to be adding a box shadow. And the first one is going to be at -30 pixels. So this is the offset, and it's going to have 0, 0, 0. So we don't want any blurs or vertical offsets on this or spread. So that's why those are all at 0. And then we'll say this is going to be our third color. So we're going to say dash dash pumpkin skin dash 3. So that's the color. And let's just make sure that's working before we do anything else here. Okay, so you can see that adds that one clear out there, which is fine. Now, whenever you're working with box shadows, you have to separate them with commas. So again, I'm going to do these each on their own line just so it's a little bit easier to see while we're coding along here. The next one is going to be 50 pixels. So -50 pixels and 0, 0, 0. And I'm just going to do a little copy paste here. So it's going to be this except color number 4. And we're going to do a comma. Now it's going to be a lot of copy paste here because these are all going to follow kind of the same pattern. So the next one is going to be at 30 pixels. And it is going to be color number 5. And then the next one is going to be, whoops, not -30. This is going to be a +30. And then the next one is going to be at +50. and it's going to be color number 6. Okay, so that's the last little shadow there. Now when we save, you can kind of see all those guys. Let me widen that out. Right, so there's the -50, the -30, the default one, the +30, and the +50. So we've added, a couple of shadows on each side and slid those left and right via that horizontal offset value right there. So that's looking pretty good now for our pumpkin. Let's go ahead and finish this guy off. I want him to sort of stretch a little bit. So right now he's pretty flat. I want him to look a little bit more oval shaped. So we're going to pull that off with a transform. So let's say transform, and we're just going to do a scale. Scale Y, because we want to transform on the Y axis, and 1.5 should do it. So you can see that really kind of stretches him out now. Now I'm going to come up here to my margin. I'm actually going to increase this to 4 ems just to push him down a little more, because we're going to be adding a stem up there at the top here in just a minute. So that's the basis for the pumpkin. He's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and add in the stem. So for the stem, we're going to be using pseudo elements. So we're going to be creating a pseudo element for the before, and the content is going to be blank. The position is going to be absolute, and I'm just going to turn on outline temporarily so you can see this. 1 pixel solid red, and let's go ahead and give him a width of 11 pixels, a height of 25 pixels. And now you can see that pseudo element there. So what I need to do is I need to take that pseudo element, and notice its location. It's in the top left of that original circle. I need to move him over because I want this to sort of be the stem up here. So now we're going to use CSS positioning. So let's say top -25%, and we're going to say left is 41%. And you can see it shifts him sort of up there at the top. Now you can fiddle around with the numbers. You can use percentages or pixels, right? According to your needs, you can kind of adjust that and get it just where you want it. Okay, now let's go ahead and add a gradient. So we're going to do the same thing, a background image, and I'm going to pull this down a little bit so you can see better. Linear gradient, and we're going to start this guy off at -70 degrees, and then it's going to go to this color, which we're going to call we called this the pumpkin stock 1 is the name of that color, at 50%. And then it's going to be transparent from 50% to 100%. So that's a little bit lengthy there, I know, but you can kind of see what that does. So basically, let me zoom in here. We created a gradient that went from, it's angled like this, but that color stop is set at 50%, so the other half is transparent. It's kind of a trick you can actually use in CSS to create triangles, just having a square, filling it with a gradient that has half of it transparent, and you end up with a triangle. So that's going to be what we're going to use for that. Now let's create the next part of the stem. So we're going to do that on the after pseudo element. So pumpkin after, because we have 2 of these to work with here. And it's going to be a similar thing right here. So let's grab the content and position of absolute. The width and height are going to be the same here for our after. And the top and left are going to be slightly different, but the top is going to be the same. The left is going to be 50%. All right, let's actually outline this guy so we can see him as well. Outline 1 pixel solid blue, let's say. Okay, so you can see there's my second little one. And for this guy, we're just going to give a regular old background color. So we'll say background color, and it's going to be our variable, of course. And it's going to be the pumpkin, what do we call this? Pumpkin stock 2. And there we go. So now we can get rid of these outlines. So let's get rid of that outline, and let's get rid of that outline. That was just for illustration purposes. And there we're left with our cute little pumpkin stock. So that works just fine. And let's continue on down here. So the next little piece we're going to work on are the eyes. So remember, we have an I element, an I div that's a child of our parent div. So we're going to use some positioning here to get this to go where we want. So just like we did before, I'm going to turn on an outline just so you can see it as we're working with it. And we'll get started. So width, we're going to set to 25 pixels. Height to 30 pixels. And let's save that. Why didn't it show up? And it didn't show up because I actually, in my HTML, I gave both of these guys IDs. Whoops. Let's switch these over to classes. An ID would work fine as well. They're both the same, but I'll just stick with classes here. There we go. Now we can see that outline appearing properly. So there's my width and my height. Let's go ahead and give these guys a background. So we're going to say background is going to be set to our next variable, which is our dash dash light dash flicker background 1. Okay, so now we can see that. Now we can see it. I can get rid of this outline. I don't need that anymore. So this is going to become our eye. We're going to do a few little interesting tricks here. So the first thing we're going to do is position this guy to get it just where we want. So we're going to say position absolute, and let's go ahead and move him. Top is going to be 10 pixels, and right is going to be 60%. Okay, so you can kind of, he's going to be the left eye here. Now, there's a lot of different ways we can make triangles or things like that out of this guy, but we're going to be using a radius value. We're going to be customizing the 4 values of the radius. So we're going to say border dash radius, and let's go ahead and say 100%, which is the top left. I'll just do this piece by piece. And then we're going to say 0, 0, 50%, and save. So you can see that kind of gives that's 100%, that's 0, and that one's 50%. So we kind of get this little oblong shape, if you will. And then we are going to give this guy a box shadow. So box dash shadow, and this is going to be an inset shadow. 3 pixels, 5 pixels, 0, RGBA. So that's the horizontal, vertical, and the blur. And this is going to be 0, 0, 0. So that's black, the color black, and 0.2% in transparency. So 20% alpha value, and save. And you can see that kind of gives a little bit of a 3D feeling, as if that eye was cut out. So that's what the box shadow does for us. All right, next we're going to rotate this guy slightly. So we're going to say transform, and we are going to rotate -15 degrees so that he kind of pulls this way a little bit. And then we're going to mirror this guy and flip him over on the other side and pull him the opposite way. So that's the eye. Now we're going to basically copy all of this code and paste it down here, because the eye and the eye after, so this is another pseudo element, are going to be very similar. So the after is just going to have a few changes. So the width and the height, everything's the same like that. Position absolute. So the change here is going to be that because it's an after element, we need to add our content and just set that to blank for now. And now you can see it actually appears. And then we need to change a few of these values. So we're going to add multiple transforms here. One, I want to slide it over to the other side. So we can do that with a translate X. And it's going to go over 63 pixels. Okay, so you can see that slid it over that way. And now we're going to be doing a scale X, and this is kind of a cool trick here, of -1. When you scale something to -1, it actually just mirrors it. It sort of inverts it. So you can see what happens here. That flips it around. And then now we just have to change our rotation to -30 degrees. So it rotates a little bit more. And here's an interesting problem. Because we're rotating this eye like this, when we translate, it actually translates it and slides it up and to the right. So it translates along the rotated axis, which is a problem. So now we need to translate it back down so they're a little bit closer. So for that one, we're going to use the translate Y, and just, I don't know, a couple of pixels is all it's off. And you can see now that moves it back down closer to where we want it. So that is the CSS for the eyes. So pretty cool there. Lastly, as far as the design goes, and then we'll animate it, is the mouth. Okay, so for the mouth, we're going to give it a position of absolute, and we're going to say width is 1, whoops, not 1 pixel, 90 pixels, and height is 30 pixels. And let's go ahead and give it a background color so we can see it. And that's going to be our variable light flicker 1. Okay, now we can see the mouth over there. So we need to position it and move it down. So let's say top is going to be 55%. And that moves it down that way. And then left is going to be 50%. And that shifts it over that way. And next we are going to add in a transform. So this is kind of a neat trick. You can shift something left 50% and then you can transform it back negative 50% and you'll center it. So now we can say transform. We're going to do a translate Y, negative 50%. Whoops, have an extra one of those. And not Y, that's supposed to be X. There we go, and that slides it back. So now it's sort of in the middle. Now we're going to give a border radius. So we're going to round off the bottom of the mouth only. So for the border radius, then we're going to set to 0, 0, 30 pixels, 30 pixels. And you can see that rounds off the bottom corners only. And I think that's the last, just kidding, we have to add a box shadow. So this is going to be the same similar idea we did before. 4 pixels, 4 pixels, 0 pixels, RGBA, and it's going to be 20%. So that gives us our, whoops, we forgot to add the inset word. That gives us our little, 3D effect there as well. Okay. So now we're going to use the pseudo elements before and after to add our teeth, and then we'll make the mouth move. So mouth before, scroll down here again for you, is going to have an empty content, position of absolute, top here, whoops, top is going to be set to 0, left to 24%. And then this is going to be a fun little trick here, but width is 1 pixel and height is 1 pixel. And just so you can see this, outline 1 pixel solid red. Okay, so the before element is laying here. And I can't see it because I didn't actually add the period here. Dot mouth, there we go. So you can see the little teeny 1 pixel by 1 pixel. Now we're actually going to create that triangle tooth with some border tricks. So you can actually create triangles with borders as well. So here's how we do that. We assign a border left of 6 pixels, solid, but transparent. Transparent. Okay. And then we assign a border right of 6 pixels, solid, also transparent, so it's see-through. Then we assign a border top of 13 pixels, solid, and then a color. So I'm just going to go with red for now. Let's delete this outline. And you can see what that does. So I have a transparent border here, and the top one has a solid border. So it sort of creates that triangle because borders have those chamfered corners, which is kind of interesting. So now let's replace this red with our actual color. So it's going to be our variable, and it's going to be set to our pumpkin. What is this? I think it's our skin 2. It's the same color as this skin, which is our skin 2, maybe? Nope, wrong. Skin 1, I think that one is. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to copy all of this code and paste it because our after pseudo element is nearly identical. It just has a different position. So its left value here, in fact, we can just say right 24%. And that's pretty much it. And then we got to change the color. This one's going to be the skin number 2. There we go. So now we have our teeth in place. So now let's animate the mouth. So we can say dot mouth, and we are just going to say, we're going to use CSS Animations here instead of transitions. So we're going to create an animation called laugh. And it's going to be 0.7 seconds and infinite on the loop. We'll just leave it like that for now. And then let's create that animation. So we need to say at keyframes laugh. And we are going to say at 50%, change the height to 1.5 ems. And save, and that's it. So you can see this alternates between 50%. So at 50%, the height is 1.5. At 0%, it's 1. So it's just animating back and forth because it's on that infinite loop. And our guy there is kind of laughing. Okay, now let's go ahead and add in we're going to sort of simulate a candle flicker, like as if this guy had a candle or a light inside of him. That's why we have our 2 colors set up for our flicker background colors. So let's do that next. So this guy, let's just do this. We're just going to write this right below this guy. So we're going to say, we could do these up on the other selectors, but we'll just write them here. .I and .I after. So these guys are going to have an animation as well. I'm just going to copy and paste this one. And the animation is going to be called flicker. And it's not going to be 0.7 seconds. We're going to make it something like 3 seconds. Okay, now let's create the flicker animation. I'll copy this one, paste it down here, and this one's going to be called flicker. All right, now what we're going to do is we're just going to change the background color, basically. So we can say at 0%, the background is going to be set to our variable. So we're going to call this our light BG flicker, well, I don't know, 1? I think yeah, sure. We'll start on 1. Really doesn't matter here if we go with 1 or 2. And then we're going to just basically copy this and just kind of randomize it a little bit. Maybe at 20%, we want this to go to number 2. So now let's save, and you can kind of see now they're transitioning between those 2 points over a 2-second period. And you just kind of make this up however you want. I'm just going to do this several more times. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll say at 30%. We'll make another one at 50%, maybe a 60% one, and then maybe a 95 or something. And you just alternate. So 1, 2. So this one's going to be a 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's alternating between all these colors. And now you can kind of see it has that little sort of a, I don't know, flicker periodically in there. And that's pretty much it. So my eyes are animating, so I need to also add this animation to the mouth. We can, of course, chain CSS Animations, I guess, is a way of saying it. So, comma. This one's also going to have the flicker of 3 seconds and infinite. And there we go. So there is the full pumpkin laughing at us, animated. So we used all sorts of tricks, tips and tricks inside of there using some fancy CSS. Again, post a comment down in the description. We'll draw a random winner for a free year of web hosting. Also, I'd love to see your CSS. So go ahead and design one up and post a link, maybe your code pen, and let's see what you can create. Hope you've liked this tutorial. Like, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.